Chris, welcome to the podcast, my friend. It's good to see you.
See you, Jay. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, man. Doing all right. My wife was in Australia for 2.5 months, or almost 3 months actually. So she came back. I picked her up from the airport yesterday in Toronto, and man, I got to tell you, I think we can, as men, grown men, we can probably delude ourselves into thinking we're more cultured and evolved when we have a good woman around us at all times. However, with my wife halfway across the world, I realized that I'm basically just a knuckle dragging college student. And yeah, I really haven't not evolved much since then, since that time at all, which was disappointing to find out.
Funny you mentioned that. Was she on walkabout for 3 months?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, just went over with my daughter and just toured all over Australia. It's kind of a bucket list trip she's been wanting to do for a while.
Uh, yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I've been single for the last 3 months after a 3-year relationship, and it just, you know what, as you know, we're not the easiest type to sort out. But you know what? For the first time in a long time, I feel good and comfortable being single. Whereas it's been in the past, it's been okay, out of one relationship, jump into another. And for the first time in a very long time, I actually can honestly say I am good being single.
What do you think has? Well, first of all, I mean, sorry about the loss of your relationship. Glad that you're happy with being single. What do you think? What do you think is? Well, let me introduce you first, and then we can get into it, so people know who the hell I'm talking to. All right, Chris Coulter is the founder of The Mentor Well and the creator of Lifeline Parenting Workshops, both shaped by the loss of his daughter, Maddie. He turned that pain into a commitment to help teens build confidence and emotional strength and to help parents understand what their kids are carrying. His work gives families support he once needed and creates safe spaces for youth who feel lost or alone. Shows up with honesty, empathy, and a steady focus on giving every young person someone who truly sees them. And I can definitely say, just from my witnessing from a distance, just about how committed you are to this project and mentoring teens, and how much valuable, super valuable content you put out there. But be that as it may, I'd love to just chat about what do you think changed this, allowing you to feel okay being single.
I think it's a couple of things. Um, Probably this transformation had happened about, I'll say, 6 months ago. So I'm 10 and a half years into dealing with loss of my 14-year-old daughter, Maddie. Um, and for the longest time, I've been trying to get back to that person I was before we lost Maddie. And then, which is always difficult, because your brain changes it when you experience like the traumatic loss. And I thought, man, shit, do I have like adult ADHD now? Or because I was always really good at making decisions. I was like a taskmaster. And fuck, I was completely incapable of finishing tasks, of making decisions, just being kind of focused. And the last 10 years has been a real challenge for that. And my GP said, "No, Chris, that's what traumatic loss does for you." And so what ended up happening? I ended up coming to this realization: I'm not supposed to get back to that person I was before. I'm supposed to embrace the person I am today. And there are aspects of that old guy, that old younger guy, that I miss. But there's a lot of qualities I like about who I've become. And I think that 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 has helped in addition to working on the mentor well. And I truly believe Maddie's on this journey with me. Like I feel she is my co-pilot. And for the first time in a very long time, when I think of Maddie, I think of happy things as opposed to sadness. It's, and 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 it I don't know. I find it, grief has always been one of those things that's really, I've been really troubled with. And because mostly because I couldn't figure the thing out. And I'm always trying to, okay, what's this doing to me now? I'm sure you can relate. But when I finally realized just to go with it, embrace who I've become, I've kind of flipped the script, and as a consequence, I'm happy with the person I am, and I think there's been always that challenge with not loving myself because there's a lot of guilt with what we carry, and I think once I came to the conclusion that, you know what, just embrace the person you are because there's a lot of really good qualities that person possesses that the former guy did not. So I think that probably has a lot to do with it.
I mean, at the end of the day, we can only love someone else to the level we've learned to. Like, we can't love someone beyond the level we've learned to love ourselves. So, hearing that you've made progress in this way, I mean, I think is I'm really happy to hear it. And I think you said a couple things that maybe we'll touch on now, and then we can get into the story of Maddie. But it's something you said that I think is might be jarring for people to hear is that you lost your daughter 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, and you're talking like listening to you talk about this journey through grief and how long it takes to understand the impact and understand who you are now and what you care about and all these things, and it's an incredibly long time. So um, I think people might hear that. I imagine some people might hear that and go 10 years, like God. But I mean, I just love, maybe you just reflect on just the incredible amount of time it takes to piece things back together, reassemble Humpty Dumpty, let's say, after something like losing a child or suffering a devastating loss.
Yeah, I think the challenge is, and it's, hey, my grieving journey isn't over. It's going to continue on it, for forever. I'm assuming, and it's uh, it's just the ups and downs, and I'm not sure if you feel this too, but I can have this string of 4, 5, 6 great days, and then all of a sudden I'm just complete. It's like this rogue wave that just knocks me off my out of the boat, and I'm struggling, and I'm like, where the hell did that come from? I was on this amazing kind of flow, and all of a sudden you just go, didn't see that coming. And it's last night, as an example, I was like woken up out of a dead sleep, and I just started feeling this anxiety and this panic, and I'm going, I'm not worthy. So the self-loathing isn't something you move beyond. It's still there, that it ruminates in the background, but it's certainly not as evident as it used to be.
Yeah, man, I can relate to that for sure. So yeah, let's talk. I mean, let's talk about Maddie. So I mean, maybe just you know, maybe what she was like, some things you loved about her, what being her dad was like, and then leading up to obviously the tragic moment of her death.
Yeah, it was. Maddie was. She was a spirit unto herself. She just had this kind of laissez-faire. This. You know what? She wasn't a conforming teenager who kind of hung out with certain cliques. She could be friends to the friendless, and she was popular as hell. Wicked sense of humor, and had this guttural laugh that I miss. And I don't know if this happens to you, but you're ever out in public and you hear a laugh or something that was really familiar, and you do that look around, and you think you might hear your daughter's laugh. I just like that. That used to kind of jar me, but in a bad way. Now I hear it and it just kind of lights me up. I wish I heard it more, and obviously can't replace the real version of it. But so Maddie was this incredible person who was super, super kind, and she was athletic. She was smart, not in the brilliant sense, but just really, she's just really in tune with life. She, I, I heard all these stories. Unfortunately, a lot of them were after Maddie had passed. People came up to me and said, "I just wanted to share a story that why I'm going to really miss Maddie." And it was this person she'd met once or twice, and she was new to her high school, as was Maddie, and new to the city. And she was on her way to class in a crowded hallway, dropped all of her books all over. Everyone just continued on their way. Maddie stopped, helped her pick up all her books, and said, "Where's your class? I'll walk you to your class." And it's a little things like that that. And so this girl who'd only been probably only met her a couple of times, just how she made people feel was really incredible. And she she just didn't put up with shit. She had strong opinions, and our relationship by no means was perfect. We had our challenges, and I think the biggest compliment she ever said to me, I said, "Dad, I know why we kind of have we butt heads sometimes. I think because I'm a lot like you, and there's a lot of truth in that. I think, um, but it's yeah, it was an incredibly special relationship, but." Um, I think what probably was the tipping point for her was when we went through a pretty painful divorce, and we were we were living in Toronto, and uh, their mom wanted to take them and live in Europe, and I said no, no freaking way. So I fought, and unfortunately, Maddie was in the position where she was kind of the she was the eldest of my three, and she was at an age where she kind of had to make the ultimate decision for the three of them. And that's no position that any, I think she was probably 13, should be placed in. So um, that is that that I believe started the kind of the tailspin as far as that. And obviously there were other underlying issues, but I think our divorce really heavily impacted her, not just from the breakup of the family unit, but just the position she was put in.
What did you notice in her as far as signs that she was struggling or changes in her, if anything? Because I found the reason I'm asking is because it's every situation is just completely unique, and after the fact, I mean, we all are blessed or cursed with the gift of hindsight, let's say, and you're gonna look back on all these things and it's so bloody obvious, like all the red flags that were for some reason, for me anyways, were either very difficult to see or difficult for me to truly grasp the severity of what was actually going on. But yeah, I mean, what did you notice?
Probably the usual signs, probably greater isolation. I think another factor was she was a provincial competitive swimmer, and she did exceptionally well. And we were at a meet, 2 day meet, and the first day she'd normally podium, and I could just tell that she was fighting the water, and it wasn't the physical aspect; it was the mental aspect. And at the end of the first day, she said, "Dad, do we have to come back tomorrow?" And being a single dad and coaching both my boys hockey and kind of being always on the go all the time, and mom wasn't mom wasn't in town, I kind of said, yeah, sure. Gave her a pass. And, and that was the last time she actually got back in the pool and swam competitive. So, and that's where I believe if she would have had someone like a mentor who would have been maybe 5, 10 years older, who had gone through similar types of situations, be it involved with a nasty divorce, or whether there was a competitive swimmer or competitive athlete who just was feeling overwhelmed or stressed, or just feeling indifferent. If she would have been able to sit down with that person, and hey, she came out the other side okay, and maybe, and that's the whole aspect of the whole mentoring thing for me, is is taking lived experiences and be able to share them with someone who's going through them at that point in time, and just seeing a path forward, because that's the problem. So many kids feel stuck, and it's a lot of it is they were never taught about what their emotions really meant. And and that is, I think that is something that could have really benefited Maddie ultimately. um, so yeah, the competitive swimming, I wish she would have maybe ratcheted it down a level or two, and if she felt the urge then to get back into it at a higher level, and if she didn't, that was fine. But it's I think when kids kind of start losing interest in the activities they used to love, that is a red flag. Friend groups change, changing schools, moving, all that stuff contributes. But social media, it's I would see how her posts would really impact her. If they didn't get the traction that she was hoping they would get, or if someone made a comment that she interpreted as negative, it would really weigh on her. So those were a lot of the not so obvious signs, but now in hindsight, as you say, we kind of look back and go, shit, I wish I would have known. I would have tackled that a little differently. I would have handled it a little differently.
Yeah, man, the amount of I can't imagine there's a grieving parent who hasn't said that to themselves, somewhere between once and a million times. I want to make one thing I want to make clear for the audience is the story you told about Maddie when the girl dropped her books and Maddie showed that incredible act of kindness. I just want the audience to know that even though you and I don't know each other very well, I'm 100% sure that characteristic in her did not come from you. Okay, so let's just make sure that's clear. No,
maybe
so
maybe the old version of Chris, maybe.
yeah, that's right. That's right, man. So, I mean, obviously losing someone, I mean, it's a shock, a huge shock, especially a child. And even, I mean, with Maddie, had her, a child suicide is always going to be a massive shock, but had her mental health deteriorated to the point where like you were afraid of her taking her life, or did this feel like it came out of almost out of the blue?
The initial attempts, there were in December 2014. Boys had a hockey game. Maddie said she was going to stay at home and study for her exams. Well, we came back and she was gone. No note, kind of find your phone feature had been disabled. The kids are always pretty quick to figure out. And so in a panic, I went, okay, where the hell is she? I so I called around. I found out there was a party that was going on, and she was at this party. I went in, and she was pretty wasted, and she was 14 at that point, and everyone was kind of God's own drunk. And so I, I, I found her, and I said, "Come on, let's go. We'll talk about this in the morning." And kind of kissed her on the forehead and just say, "You know what? Tomorrow's a new day." And the next morning, the door was locked, and I went, okay, she just wants her own kind of space, privacy. Didn't think much of it. And I went into the kitchen, and I saw these pills on the floor, and I went, oh fuck, don't tell me. I'm thinking, all of a sudden my mind's racing. I put my shoulder through the door. It's kind of she's she's not completely unconscious, but she's not in a good place either. Um, anyway, the cops, paramedics, firemen, they all come. We've got the neighbors on the end of the driveways kind of going, what's going on? What's going on? And she ended up spending 10 days in the youth psychiatric unit. And so I didn't see that coming. And then she was there for 10 days. She was let out about a week before Christmas. And she was with me for a couple of weeks. And
Hey, Chris, can I ask you a question about that? How did Maddie explain like the darkness at that point, like, or her thought process?
at that time, she didn't.
Okay.
Um, and I guess one of the qualifying questions when they put you on a Form 1 when you're at the emergency department is, how did you feel when you realized you hadn't taken your life? Were you relieved? Were you disappointed? She had said she was disappointed. So I guess that is kind of the qualifying question to whether or not they have a stay in the psychiatric unit. And about 2 weeks later, she attempted again. And it wasn't after a night of drinking. It basically, we had a quiet, um, really unremarkable evening. I think we watched a movie or something, and she went into her room, and I at that point I got rid of all the pills. I got rid of everything. I took all the booze out of the house, and somehow she found something, and she had attempted again. And I didn't. I drove her up to the hospital this time, but once again she was disappointed. She just and then she started to share with me she had this darkness, and she just didn't want to be there. And she was in the psychiatric unit for the second time for 2 months. And normally,
What's going through your head at this time?
oh, essentially, it was my second home for 2 months. Um, and I remember sitting on her bed in the unit, and her telling me that she didn't want to be a burden to us anymore, and that she just didn't want to be there. And you're just trying to plead with your child that life will get better. You know what? Let's just get through the next day, and we'll take it from there. And then so she was there for 2 months, which they loved her in the psychiatric unit. She was like the unit greeter. So families would come in scared shitless, because it was all under lock and key and secured facility. And Maddie would go up to this this young person, a parent, and she'd go, "Hi, welcome. I'm Maddie. Do you want me to give you a tour around the place?" So that was who she was. She would give of herself at the sacrifice of herself, um, just so someone else would feel better. And that was kind of the way that was the kind of the way she was. And from so after 2 months, they put her on an outpatient program, and she
So she seemed to. It sounds like she seemed to be making some kind of positive
she would,
progress
but
here.
there was one time. Eventually, what they gave her were like kind of day passes or afternoon passes. So we went back to my place, and we had lunch, and we were playing a game, and then all of a sudden she looked at me and said, "Daddy, you got to take me back to the hospital." And I went, "Why? What's going on?" And she said, "I don't feel safe with myself right now." And I was like, okay. And there wasn't anything that precipitated it. So we went back, and but she would have
Your heart must have just dropped, man.
oh
Like,
yeah, it's and people have asked me, would it have been better? There's never a good hypothetical situation in those cases. And then and then she was on a pass, and she was staying with her mom at that point, and I got I hadn't slept for about 3 4 nights. I put my phone out of my room and had it charging in the other room just because I needed to sleep. And I think I took 2 Gravols, and so I was knocked out. And uh, I'd missed 22 calls on my phone. And as soon as you see that, you just know. I knew something was up, and I knew it was Maddie. And it was I'll never forget that feeling. I went over to my ex-wife's place, and I remember the cop was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and the cop was walking down the sidewalk to her porch where we were sitting, and he just said, "I'm sorry," and it was just like, ugh. So yeah, it's I still get shivers when I think of that moment because it seems so real, and it seems like it was yesterday. And
I think that's. I mean, it's the moment every parent imagines. Like tons of times. The minute your teenager's 5 minutes late, you're like your mind's. You start thinking on one hand, there's no way it could happen. On the other hand, you start imagining what would it be like if it did happen. And I can tell you from personal experience, whatever you think it's like, it's a fucking million times worse. For me, it was like being hit with a taser.
yeah, oh no, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, if anyone would have told me this was what my next 10 years was going to look like, I was said, no fucking way. But yeah, no, it's a brutal journey, and not that you're scot free, but just feeling like my sense of purpose has changed in the last 6 months has been it's been life changing for me. It's not that my life is perfect by any means, but it just seems more purposeful, and it's not as heavy. Although I do still have those heavy days.
Well, I think that's a really, I mean, that's what I'm really looking forward to talking to you about, man, is to show people that there's hope. Like, I mean, it's the worst thing ever, like, or worst, by far the worst thing that I've experienced, but there's, and we're coming up on three years here. So, I mean, I consider that just the beginning, like, honestly, like, but it's enough time where the real impact, I mean, I think for me anyways, I start to, like, I'm starting to realize it. Like I was saying to my wife the other day, uh, I was saying, I think I'm only just starting to grasp how much this has changed me as a person. Like I still have, I still like the same things. I still have basically the same set of values and everything. But like the things that were important to me are not fucking important to me at all. And I feel kind of like you, like just called in a different direction, let's say, as a result of what we've experienced, like you have. So yeah, I mean, what as you think about the aftermath, I mean, I guess one thing I'm really interested about is the guilt, because in your case, I mean, I think everybody will have very likely guilt about something, but I mean, yours was from your perspective. I mean, your marriage, the dissolution of your marriage in your mind, played a key part in Maddie's mental health and her experience and stuff. And so, I mean, what is that like to try to work through that?
Well, and
Because the reality is, I mean, even if you guys had stayed together, nobody knows what would happen. We drive ourselves mad with all these. If I only had done X, then Y would have happened. Well, you don't know why would have happened. You have no idea what would have happened. But anyway, sorry. I just wanted to,
Yeah, no, and
yeah, what was that
just
like?
to add another kind of layer of complexity to it. A year prior to that, I had had a business for 20 years, and we got whacked by the 2008 financial crisis, and so we kept it going, blew through all of our cash and retained earnings for 2 years, and in February 2010, basically filed for bankruptcy and ended up walking away with nothing. Yeah, so that was kind of that was the start of it, but it was that, then followed by the divorce, then followed by Maddie's death. Yeah, it's been a. I was happy to say goodbye to the last 10, 15 years.
I bet. Well, how do you? I mean, so now that you're 10 years on, I mean, you've got this. You obviously have this massive amount of, and I'm sure there was guilt related to other things, just than just your divorce. But I mean, you've got all this guilt you've got to work through. This is what kills so many people. I mean, 10 years on. I mean, what is the experience of coming to terms with that, Ben? Like, how would you describe where you are now? Like, I mean, what was it like?
Yeah, the guilt will always be there on some level, and I think for me, as I mentioned earlier, just having it's interesting, and we all have different grief journeys. But the more I've talked to people who have been on a similar path as what we've been through, it's there's a lot of similarities, but and a lot of ebbs and flows of what we've experienced along the way. I've for me was I guess about 5 years ago, 5 6 years ago, I've been asked to help with a not-for-profit. And I've been asked by a whole bunch of charities if I'd be interested in getting involved. And nothing really resonated with me until I was asked to get involved with this not for profit called How Are You Feeling, which teaches kids about understanding their emotions. And phenomenal it was a phenomenal program. I just got so disheartened by the schools who just kind of said, no, we already have our own programs. Even after the kids had told us, this program changed our lives. And when a kid tells you that something changed their life, a teenager tells you that, you listen. And meanwhile,
Yeah.
95% of the kids told us that what they were learning with regards to mental health and wellness in school was a complete waste of time. Which was,
Oh, man, you know what? Sorry, I gotta jump in here because I had the same experience, man, where I was like, I wanted to I wanted to talk to the kids at high schools about the like the message from Chloe, like when my daughter when she died, she was drinking and driving, it was horrible, like, and I wanted to like talk to students about to teach them not about to be some other old fucking person telling them not to drink and drive, but telling them about the power of their choices. And like even though Chloe's choices had a devastating, like, a catastrophic impact, it works the other way around, man. Your choices can have that same degree of positive impact. Anyways, I wanted to like talk to them. The fucking response I got from the school was just total bureaucraties. We've got a approved list of vendors who are trained in trigger, like, fuck, man. It's just drove me crazy. So anyways, I can totally relate to how you're
oh
feeling.
yeah, and so I was so disenchanted with that whole process. Even though we had 600 kids that went through our program, and it was good timing because it was during COVID, and there weren't a lot of volunteer opportunities for kids who needed their mandatory volunteer hours. And so we got it approved as a volunteer program, and so kids could qualify for 20 hours. It was a pretty significant commitment of time. But uh, yeah, when you get that response, when kids say this thing was so powerful, this needs to be part of our curriculum, and then just getting it poo pooed, that just made me sick. So I was there for about a year and a half. I still am an advisor because I totally believe in the program, but I ended up saying, I got to get ahead of the schools before I can't, we can't be impacted by school decision making. We have to actually be able to put pressure on schools so they actually have to conform. So the problem is, and I'm not sure if you experienced this too, Jason, but once you come out of that wallowing in self pity mode, I just had like 20,000 things that I wanted to do to change the world. And I was trying to execute on all of them. And one of the things with the whole grieving journey is you're incapable of doing one thing at a time, let alone 10,000. So I'm sure people would go, oh, here comes Chris with one of these holier than thou ideas. And yeah, we'll applaud him from afar, but so I'm sure people with there was a lot of reservations when I said, you know what, this mentor well program is going to be that's the next big bright shiny object for Chris, I guess. But since it's been over a year now, people are actually seeing, and it's got legs, and
Mm.
it's developing, and it's morphing into something that corporations now are saying, yeah, this is something I we didn't have any idea, and there is this massive gap with regard to prevention in our system. And when 1 in 4 parents are dealing with a kid who's struggling with mental health, which you and I both know, when your child struggles, you struggle too. So it impacts productivity, absenteeism, presenteeism, retention, we're kind of creating this new category within corporate benefit benefit plans, and it's we wrap education around identifying what's going on with their kids. When should you be concerned? What can you do to be able to identify what's really going on with your kid, as opposed to chalking it up for just normal teenage behavior. And because parents, I think they don't. It's not that they're dismissive, but they think this only happens to other people's families. And until they're in the midst of it, or they have a close friend or family member has also gone through it, there's a lot of people who just kind of live in denial. And so going in and educating parents at corporations about, yeah, should you be looking for as a parent? When should you be worried? And then the next piece is how can you actually build a bridge with your child, the relationship, as opposed to putting up walls? Because the thing I probably get asked more than anything else by parents, as I'm sure you get approached all the time, it's what can I do to get my kid to start to talk to me? And my basic response is just shut the fuck up when they start to talk.
That is, dude. That is, I was just about to say, shut the fuck up and
Yeah.
listen. Like, Jesus. Like,
And
yeah.
and so that is, or someone had told me about 6 months ago. They told me about this phrase: if you're unsure whether your kid wants advice, or if they just want you to listen. And the thing is, parents want to give advice 90% of the time. Kids want you to listen 90% of the time. So the phrase is this a listen? Is this a fix it or feel it conversation? So when they start talking, just go, hey, do you want my help with this, or do you just want me to kind of lean in and kind of be here in a non-judgmental way? And just that little switch in the dynamic is, I've told that to so many parents, and they get back to me and go, Chris, I've started using that, and that is such a big difference maker in how my relationship is with my teenager. But there's so many other tricks that, not tricks, strategies that and it's basically all emotional intelligence based. But parents, I think we care too much. We love too much. And there's so much emotional investment. And and not only that, but parents also are the ones that control the punitive aspect of the relationship. So I hear about parents who their kid tells them something that they probably are a little gun shy about talking to them about, but they, let's say they tried pot or whatever it is, and then the parent freaks out and says, "Well, I thank you for telling me that, but you're grounded. You lost this." And so, how often is a kid after that going to be vulnerable enough to share some of these vulnerable moments with their parents? So just strategies like that, and they're not easy. They're simple, but they're not easy. These things, but it forces you to take a completely different tact with your kids than most of us were either brought up understanding because that's how our parents talk to us because that's often what our default setting has been. Um, and it's we're not good listeners as parents, and we have to be better listeners. And we if we don't listen, we can't hear. So
There's so much to what you're saying there that I totally resonate with because I think about this all the time. Is that as I've gotten older, and I work with all the coach all these leaders and companies and whatever, and basically it fundamentally boils down to this two of the same problems. We are our emotionally intelligent. Our emotional intelligence is basically non-existent, and we do not know how to communicate with other people. Like these two fundamental things fuck up everything. And so and when like I'm thinking as you're talking because one of the things I'm thinking so this is actually going to be the first episode where I change the name from man down to leading through loss, and because I think exactly what you're saying. Like to me, the pitch to companies is these skills. Like so, for example, the skills that you need to support to lead yourself or lead a team member through grief, they're the same skills that drive higher fucking performance in your team. Like creating psychological safety, being curious, being asking great questions, like staying calm under pressure, validating someone's emotion, like all emotional experience, all this stuff. So it's the same thing for you, man. Like these skills, these are the exact skills that everybody doesn't have that in a work setting. So I always tell people, like, these are the highest leverage skills you can learn because you can learn them and literally apply them in every conversation you have with another human being, man. Like, where do you get that kind of return for investment? And it's going to, like, because leadership is relational. Everything you get done in your life, you get done through basically the relationships you have with other people. So at work, people rely on these positional relationships, like my box on the org chart is bigger than yours. Come on, man. Like form a human relationship with someone, with the people around you based on, understanding the human condition, being curious about their experience, understanding why the things they do, the things they say and do make sense to them. Like, all of these things, man, they're just universally applicable and we don't learn them, which actually makes me wonder. I'm not going to go down conspiracy rabbit hole here, but it makes me wonder if it's by design that we don't learn these fundamental skills. I'm not sure how this could have happened, but it did. So there's my rant.
yeah, no, and I agree. And I wrote something today about how leaders are brought in to change the culture of a company, and but you can't change the culture of a company by just changing the vision and mission statement. It's it's got to be, in order to create psychological safety, there needs to be trust and there's got to be empathy, and and it's got to be top down driven. And if this is something that's kind of mandated and all these rules apply except for the guy at the top or the woman at the top, and guess what, that thing's just gonna, it's gonna die a short painful life. But it's yeah. So to your point, absolutely, all these skills are completely transformational to every single relationship. It just happens to be applicable to our kids. But that stat scared the crap out of me when I heard 1 in 4 working parents are dealing with a kid who's really struggling, and most of these parents are dealing with it on their own because of the shame factor too, the shame and the guilt aspect of things.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, what do you tell parents who say, so, I mean, on one hand, like we were talking about earlier, I mean, maybe you already answered it, but I mean, parents, they're desperate to try to get their kids to talk to them, right? And usually what we do is we do all the wrong thing. Like we, our kid comes to us and they finally come to us and they're having some kind of problem or something. And what do? We just fucking tell them all the things they should do. Right? This is what in any leadership training, or we also run a group coaching program from it. This is the first thing we teach people: emotional validation. How to acknowledge, like, seek to understand, acknowledge, and accept someone else's emotional experience without trying to change it or share yours. Let's basically just shut the hell up and listen. So, uh, yeah. So what do you think? I mean, what makes a great mentor?
It's not a degree. It is. I find listening skills, empathy, lived experience, and and a vulnerability to be willing to share. And and that, I think, is the relatability aspect from a teen's standpoint is so important, because it's, you know what, for an 18-year-old to, even though I've had 18-year-old, 19-year-old kids that I mentor, um, the relatability aspect is so much better when there's a there's maybe a 5 or 10 year delta. We're at least in the same kind of generational pull. Uh, like both my boys are mentors, and they're very different, but they've got some really interesting lived experience that they are willing and happy to share. And here's the thing too, Jason, as beneficial as it is for the mentee, it's equally beneficial for the mentor. And that there's that element of of catharsis that is so evident, but you don't realize it until you're actually having these conversations with these kids. And that's my eldest son Zach, who's 23. He was closest to Maddie, and he did speaking tours. He went around to all the various high schools and talked about um, being supportive friends and compassion and empathy and the whole bit. And he was pushed into that at an early age. He wasn't pushed into it. He said, "I want to do this as a tribute to my sister," and they were best buds. And and he's not one of those gregarious kind of extroverted kids. He's stoic. He's a calm, quiet leader. And I said to him, it wasn't that long ago. I said, "Zach, do you think you properly grieved Maddie's death?" And he said, "No, I don't think I have." And so he's what he does now. Not only is he a mentor for us, but he also is a facilitator for a bunch of elementary um, and middle school kids who have experienced a devastating loss. And they share and they talk, and they love Zach because Zach's 23, but he's relatable. He's just like a big brother or a big kid. And 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 they see that he's come through the other side and the type of character he is. Kids just really they feel comfort from his words and his wisdom, and that's why I think the mentorship aspect of things is so important, not only from a mentee standpoint, but also from a mentor standpoint, because they're digging up some shit that they, in some cases, really haven't talked to uh, and resolved within their own heads. So that's why I think it's beneficial for all.
Yeah, one of my friend, a friend I know, and maybe I said this to you last time we called. She has this term. She calls it like a mentorn, because she's like that, like a mentor and an intern, because the mentor is always learning as well. So it's, but what do you? I mean, how do you train mentors to, or what do you see as the role of a mentor? Like, where does the role of a mentor start and stop? Maybe, and where does the role of a therapist start and stop? And like, what are the mentors supposed to do if what are they instructed or trained to do if something comes up that they feel, the person might be a risk, or they report some thing that happened to them, might be a crime. Like how does that work? Or,
Yeah, well, first of all, there's the confidentiality aspect of things that we respect, and quite frankly, if kids thought that this was a pipeline back to their parents, and I've had parents say, "Is this a way I can actually check in and find out what's going on with my parent?" And I said, if you're looking for us to spy on your kid, then we're not the right one. By having what I call it is a one way um, confidentiality contract, so they can talk, they can share our mentorship sessions with their parents if they choose, but it's completely at their own will. But we can't. The only difference is if we feel that there is a safety risk, that's where we will breach the confidentiality. Um, and I don't want my mentors to be in a position where they are dealing with some pretty fragile kids. And so that's why we have a risk assessment tool that kids go through, because what they tell us and what is actually the case aren't always congruent. So we've got this test that will identify any kind of risks for suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety, and uh, addiction, suicide ideation, depression, and anxiety. And if they are, then we decide, you know what, we're not the right mentorship's not the right fit right now unless you've got a therapist, because we're not trained practitioners. And what we are is we're a safe space to talk. All these kids, if they're not talking to anyone, they need an outlet. And if they don't have that outlet, then that's why the lived experience aspect is so important. Someone who's kind of gone through and come through the other side, even though they may have been dealing with some hard shit as they were going through it, they figured out a way through it. So, from a coping strategy standpoint, it just helps them realize that there is a way through it. And sometimes that's all they want, is they want to know this isn't the end of the road for me, because kids kids today, they are very abrupt, and they're looking for, I want to end the pain. And if they don't have the emotional intelligence to be able to be self-aware and self-regulate, then they're not able to process those emotions in the proper way. So that's the other aspect of our mentorship, is we practice emotional intelligence, because it's a life skill. It's not a soft skill, as everyone likes to say. It's an essential life skill. And by having that, it just, you know what, we focus primarily on building kids' confidence, helping them with direction, and resilience, and then the EQ portion of it as well. Um, and it, it's transformational for them, and it's transformational for us. And when parents come back and go, "Shit, man, what did you do with my kid?" and and the best part, Jay, is when they go, "Hey, you know what? Thanks. I really loved what this represented and how it made me feel." And generally speaking, we're asking for a 6 month commitment. And when they come to me afterward and they go, "Hey, Chris, could I be a mentor?" And that's when you kind of go, this kid gets it. And they want to, when they want to teach someone that what they've learned, not only does it reinforce the behavior that they've learned, but it just shows the level of empathy, and it's a pretty beautiful thing. Even though it means the termination of the dynamic mentor mentee as we know it, but when they can jump into a mentor role, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I mean, what is it like for you to see your sons participating? I mean, that might just be so gratifying.
You know what? They've been they've been so strong through this whole process, and not that we want our kids to be strong. Um, but I think it's also, I'm super proud of them, and even though each of them, even though they look fairly similar, they are completely different personalities. Zach is like this steady, calm presence. Sawyer's this highly volatile. But you know what? Each kid, it will gravitate towards one or the other. So it's really cool to see that they want to participate, and the fact that, yeah, they know Maddie is a big part of this, and I think that also helps that. And you know what, my kids worry about me because I know I was I was pretty troubled for a lot of years, and I know I was. I'm sure I worried them quite a bit. So them seeing where I'm at now relative to where I was, that just kind of reinforces the fact that, yeah, this is really cool. Dad's happy. Dad's feeling empowered. Dad's purposeful. I'm not worried about dad as much too. So
Yeah, that must be a huge relief for them. And I think one of the things I try to uh, be pretty intentional about is only ever talking about my own experience. Like I try not to tell anybody else's story. I mean, I just obviously asked you a little bit about your kids, but I do think that at that age, like my daughter's 20, and I look at what it was like for me. Like after I lost my wife, for example, I didn't have any idea what grief was, and I look at kids that age because you mentioned that your son said he hasn't really processed or fully processed his grief, and I don't. I just they're just trying to. Their life is so stressful. Like at that age, at the young age, trying all this shit, planning their future and friend dynamics and school and whatever they happen to be doing. But like they're not. I think the idea of one, even accepting the fact that there's a thing that they actually have to face this thing that happened like 10 years ago. I mean, I think can be a stretch for them to like logically grasp onto. I mean, it was for me, to realize that, oh my God, that thing that happened 5 years ago is the reason I've been like that I've been drunk for the last 5 years. Wow. That's pretty weird to realize. Um, but, but I think they're just trying to get by, like they're trying to manage it. And, um, yeah, I can see that pattern playing out, and yeah, it makes me worry a bit, I think, but it also makes me realize that you know I think one of the things for a parent, I'd be curious about your point of view on this. I think like when a kid loses, say, a parent or a sibling, it's devastating. My daughter's lost a parent and a sibling, and but there's no one more self-centered than a teenager. So they're just basically like living their own experience, and they're not spending a ton of time thinking about anybody else. But as a parent, you're watching not only are you grieving, but you're watching your fucking kid in pain that you have no ability to do anything about, other than just be supportive and loving and listen. But you can't fix it, and you can't take it away, and it almost makes it doubly, I don't know what doubly bad, but just adds a whole nother layer of complexity to it. So I mean, I'm sure that was pretty rough for you, but I'm glad to hear they're doing well, man.
yeah, and you know what? It's just and Maddie's still an active person in our lives. We talk about her all the
Yeah.
time, and we always will. And and sometimes it's brings tears of joy, and other times tears of sadness. Um, Fortunately, now it's more tears of joy, and just kind of reflecting on her laugh, her sense of humor, all the great qualities she had is that is how I think that also helped to spin my 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 change in my approach to grieving, because it really, when things went from, and I'll give you an example. The 10-year anniversary of Maddie's death was April 11th this past year, and it was the easiest. I thought 10 years, holy shit, this is going to weigh really heavily on me. And my my one son's at Dalhousie, and my other son's kind of working full time. And I was thinking, oh shit, this is going to be tough. And I actually felt this lightness that I hadn't felt in ever since Maddie's death. And I think just the context had changed for me, because now she represents meaningful change. Her being kind of my sidekick on this just changed the context of what her death actually means. Yeah, she's not gone. And I think as a parent, the one thing that you want more than anything else is you never want your child to be forgotten by anyone. And that's why I think there's so many parents or so many people that are very reticent to share or bring up the loss of a child, because they feel it's painful. But if someone shares a picture of Maddie that I haven't seen before, holy fuck, do I ever? It just makes me
Yeah.
so happy, and that's why I try to communicate to other people. I said, if you got someone in your life who's lost a loved one, and you have, whether it's a story or a picture or a video, you know what? Share it with them, because it's not going to bring sadness; it's going to bring elation, and that is something that I think grief is not understood very well by the general population unless you've gone through something like what we've gone through. I don't think a lot of there's a naivete, and there's also a misunderstanding as to what someone needs as opposed to what someone should be getting.
Yeah, man, totally. 'Cause I always tell people, just if you're wondering about how they're doing, err on the side of asking. Because if I don't feel like talking about it, I'll just tell you. Like, oh man, I don't feel like talking about it right now. But like, otherwise, but most of the time, I will want to talk about it. And when people, I've taken to asking people because I want to be respectful of other people's capacity to sit with my difficult experience. I don't want to put that on someone who isn't ready for it. So a lot of times what people do is if it, I mean, first of all, hardly anybody ever asks anyways. That's part of the thing that I think grieving parents have to go through is like, you're like looking around, you're like, is anybody gonna ask about my fucking kid? Like, like what the hell, man? Like, and then you don't want to bring it up because you don't want to be, oh, there's Jay. How long is it? It's going to take him 2 minutes before he drops a bomb about how shitty things are after Chloe. Like, you don't want to be that person either, right? So then ultimately what happens is it just stops getting talked about. This person, the most important thing in your life, just stops getting talked about with the people that you care about. So I just tell people, just, number one, err on the side of asking. Number two, I generally, if somebody does ask, I just respond like, how honest do you want me to be? And there's no right or wrong answer. I'm good with whatever. Like, just tell me, because I think that I just want to make sure that I'm honoring what they need to. But I also think something else that is the most important or very important is to, if you're the griever, this is what's going to happen to you. Okay. Like, so you can then walk around and you can resent all the people in your life for all the fucking ways they let you down. Or you can just realize that we don't understand grief at all. And everybody's just doing the best they can, man. Like, they're just doing the best they can. And honestly, even though your life stopped, theirs didn't. You know, so just let's try to be a little more compassionate and empathetic.
Well, it's funny, and so we talk about how people don't ask about Chloe or Cindy or
Yeah.
Maddie, and
Yeah.
and then you got the other ones who someone feels compelled. I got it this morning, I didn't do it in a mean way, but someone at 6 o'clock this morning sends me an article about about someone who died by suicide, and so they forward me the article, and there was some other implication behind it, but and I just said, just so you know, and I'm not meaning to be an asshole about this, but I don't want to see this shit every day. I'm reminded it
Yeah.
can be triggering. And you know what? But asking about your child and then sharing all this other shit that's happening to other people, it's like they think I'm the grief monster, the Grim Reaper. I don't really want to know. So, and I was respectful the way I said it, and he's a buddy. I just said, you know what? Just don't send first thing in the morning an article about suicide. I don't want to see it. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate, but it lands differently on me than it lands on you. And I know you're doing it from a place of kindness, but it ain't kind. So
Right. Yeah, man. Well, and I think you just did. I think you just hit on two things though that are super important for a grieving person to be able to move forward. One is, to your point, you recognized, like you assumed positive intent. He wasn't trying to be a jerk. I mean, he was trying to do something helpful. Like, and it was maybe misdirected or whatever. But you assumed positive intent on his part, which I think is great. And the other one is you were clear about your boundaries, man. Like, so many people can't just state their needs, so they go unmet, and then they're resentful that their unstated needs never get met, right? So I think it's great that you were able to do those two things in that moment. One thing I want to ask you, maybe the last thing to talk about here is I saw, so you sent a message on LinkedIn. And so, just for background, and I'll post the links to Chris's social and website profiles, etc. But you post a lot of, or I would say a lot of content about Maddie and suicide and mental health and mentoring and all that. And you sent a message to a few of us in LinkedIn, and we're basically saying that some people find the content really heavy, and you were kind of wondering maybe if you should shift the focus. And I wanted to ask you about that because this is actually something I've been thinking about a lot, because one of the things I try to be aware of and ask myself, and I talk to my wife about it, like, because this work is super important to me, right? And just like yours, like yours is super important to you, and I'm always and I love feeling this sense of purpose. I found my work purposeful for a while, but like this right now, by far, feels like the most important thing. And I don't know if you ever read David Kessler's book. He wrote a book called The Sixth Stage, Finding Meaning. But it's basically about how part of healing from a devastating loss is finding a sense of purpose again, like related to that loss. And it doesn't have to be some big giant thing. It could be like building a birdhouse with their name on it or whatever. Like it's the thing itself that it doesn't really matter. It's about finding a sense of purpose. And so one of the things I've been really thinking about is the way that I'm, or one of the things I always try to be aware of is the way that I'm writing and the amount I'm writing, the things I'm writing about grief. Is this keeping me fucking stuck in grief? Like, is this actually prolonging my misery? And I don't think it is. And I try to ask myself this all the time, though, just so I can check in with that. But one of the things I've been really thinking about is really wanting to shift the focus. Even the name of this podcast, like leading through loss, because I love the idea of like man down and all that stuff, but I don't know. I just think that I am getting on one hand, I'm getting tired of. I'm questioning the utility of continuing to tell the same story. Like, you know what I mean? Like about or write about the same things about like the painful parts of grief and stuff. And I'm really actually interested in writing more about the healing and all that. The problem is, fuck man, when it bleeds, it leads, brother. I mean, nothing gets the kind of like engagement and attraction as a my life is shit post about, you know what I mean? So
well,
yeah, I'm just curious what your thoughts are about
well,
that.
it's funny, and way my friend framed it, and he told me when I wrote my book, he said, Chris, I read the first two paragraphs and I went, I can't do this. I said it's not that the writing wasn't really good. It was too painful from a parent thinking worst case scenario. And so he framed it this go around. He takes a post of mine that I posted last week, and it had I don't know, like 1,100, 1,200 likes, and shared like 80, 90 times. He said only an arrogant fool would comment that you may want to shift your focus after having kind of an explosive post like that. But it kind of brought to my attention is like, am I writing for me or am I writing for someone else? And is yes, it's cathartic from my standpoint, but do I need to be more purposeful? Do I need to err on the side of hopefulness as opposed to regret? And I thought I was spinning it more in a kind of a positive light, as positive as we can make it, and then also spinning it more to kind of mentorship and awareness. But yeah, so what I sent to you guys through DM, I'm going to actually post that same message on LinkedIn, like to the public post on LinkedIn, and see what kind of reaction it gets. And I've actually attached a survey that I want people to just honestly be earnest about. And if it weighs heavy, because I don't know about you, but I find I have I've got about 15,000 followers on LinkedIn, which they follow me, and but I also find that I must have a lot of people who fall off or people who kind of unfollow me because for whatever reason I thought people just get sick of the content, but I didn't think about it from the standpoint that it's a parent's worst fear imagined, and that hearing this stuff weighs really heavily, and and parents' minds don't want to go there. So I was appreciative of my buddy, and not only that, but he's a brilliant market researcher. And so he gave me some context around it, just as a, hey, have you ever considered this? And and so I said, you know what, I'm going to reach out to a few people I really respect, who also some who have this tragic life experience, and others that don't, but they can understand and empathize. And so it's interesting. I've had very mixed opinions just from who I got reactions from or responses from. Um, but sometimes I think we look at things, you and I, we look at things very differently than a parent who's never lost a child.
Sure. Yeah.
So and I guess who's my target audience? I don't fucking know.
I think it's yeah. I mean, I think it to me. It's. I think I probably said this in the message. I think it's like a both and. Like I'm not gonna because grief is going to still continue to be fucking hard, man. For a long time, maybe for like moments of it being difficult for the rest of my life. Like to your point, I'll always be a grieving dad. I will grow and change and evolve, and it will like it becomes less acute over time. But I can't. I just can't see it. I can't see how I won't have just wait moments of grief for the rest of my life. I mean, that's why I'll miss Chloe for the rest of my life. I mean, um, so yeah, I guess my point was I just think of it's a both and like I'm still gonna write about those things. Uh, I guess I'm feeling less disposed to write about maybe like regurgitating some of the things that happened in the past again, uh, unless I feel like it serves some kind of purpose. Like I just don't I don't want to do it to be like gratuitous or something. I'm just kind of working through all that right now.
Well, and I think if it's what I want, and the reason I write is I want to be kind of coaching parents who otherwise wouldn't know how to deal with a bunch of this shit.
Yeah, that's
Like
right.
talking about, hey, you want to be able to build a better relationship with your kid, then shut the fuck up. And a lot of the stuff we talk about is almost counterintuitive to most parents. And
Hmm.
this is what I think should happen. And in fact, it's almost like the George Costanza: just do the opposite. And that's probably more in line with what you should actually do. But it,
I literally want to hear something hilarious. I just heard someone talk about that exact episode yesterday. I mean, I probably haven't heard someone talk about that episode for like 20 years, that do the opposite, but somebody like in my life just mentioned it yesterday, and now you are today. That's funny.
yeah, no, it's a wacky world. But you know what? The chances are you and I would never have connected had we not had that common denominator. And honestly, how many guys can you have a conversation like this with?
Yeah, and think about how many lives you have impacted in ways you never would have if this hadn't happened. Like, and I've said this a million times, and but part of the healing process is accepting that something can be a tragedy and yield great gifts at the same time. Like those, you just got to be willing to look. One last question I have for you. This is completely off the wall, but it's something that is really interesting to me right now. Is so if you don't feel like answering it, don't worry about it. No problem at all. But did did this experience impact you one way or the other as it relates to like a belief in God or faith or anything like that? Like, did you believe before and then did this question it, or did you not believe and then maybe sought it, or did you not believe and just still don't believe? Like, or did it have any impact at all? Because I'm finding myself like it's really having an impact on me, and I'm feeling
Yeah,
this like,
and not so much from a religious perspective,
yeah,
um, but it certainly made me more. It made me more secure in my beliefs and my values and how I really dig in about what's really important to me. And you know what? I hate this phrase, but uh, probably a lot more spiritual, and how how the world can manifest things. Um, and yeah, to your point, is the George Costanza comment, is that just kind of like freak coincidence, or is there something more to it? I'm finding these and I noticed this early on, especially when I go out for a walk in the woods, uh, or if I was sitting in the backyard and there was like a bunny rabbit who would just kind of hang out under the tree, and I was sitting out there, and I thought that was kind of like that was Maddie looking out for me. That kind of stuff, that 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 has kind of shifted my whole belief around whether the whether the world as we know it is a lot more meaningful than than I ever saw it in the past. I think it also has taught me to kind of take note of the little things, and those little things kind of leave clues, and you got to listen to them, because what are you
yeah,
missing if you don't?
yeah. I love that. It's a great place to end. Can you imagine though, seriously, man, like playing a clip of what you just said to your 20-year-old self? Can you imagine your 20-year-old self sitting there watching your 50-something-year-old self talking about the universe manifesting shit? You would have been like, what the fuck happened to this guy, man? God.
I know. Well, but you know what has happened too, Jason, and I know you got to wrap up, but uh,
Yeah.
it's it's funny. I used to be a pretty right wing conservative guy. I've noticed that my political leaning has also become a little bit more centered, maybe even a little bit more left of center than it used to
Mm-hmm.
be. And I think that I recognize that I think that comes from compassion for others, and and I've always said that I never want. Reason I do this, one of the reasons I do this is I never want another family to experience the devastation and loss that we've gone through, and I believe that in earnest, and I think as a consequence of that, I think I'm more a little bit more left leaning now than I was in the past, which is
You know, that's so interesting because I would say, for the most part, I'm the same way in the sense that I was like I was basically like a radical libertarian, and I would say I'm much more left. I'm more left right now, but I'm still 100,000% that the government is never the way to deliver compassion. So, so I tend to be much more compassionate and way less judgmental about people because, dude, I mean, one of the things when you go, as you well know, when you lose a kid and you go through grief, you do shit that, like, you do and say, unproductive, harmful, terrible shit to yourself and to others. And like, I just think to myself, when I look at people now, like a homeless person, I think, holy Lord, man, there's been times in my life where I was like one or two decisions away from being right there, fucking right there, man. And I have so much less judgment and so much more just compassion and empathy for people, except myself.
yeah,
That's hard, but
that's a given, right?
yeah, that's right. Hey, man. Well, hey, I loved the conversation. I knew it would be great, but where's for people that want to learn more about you and Maddie's story and the mentor well, like what's the best place for them to find that? We'll include all of it in the show notes.
Yeah, the website's probably the best is thementorwell.com. I'm actually starting a school community, SKOOL. I'm not sure if you're familiar
Okay.
with that, but it's
Yep.
because I'm getting kind of reach out from all around the world, and we're just in Canada right now. So, and one of the things when we go through what we've gone through is there's such a sense of there's shame, but there's also loneliness. And anyone who's going through something like this, it's a devastatingly lonely experience. And being able to set up a community where parents can actually, who are going through the same shit with their kids, be able to talk about this stuff. And not that it's group therapy, it's really more about just feeling like they're less alone. And you know what? We're sharing a great story or sharing a win that they had that week. So I'm creating that, and that's probably going to be happening in the next within the next month. Um, yeah, what did I say about not being able to take on too much because my brain doesn't work that way anymore? But
Well, you know
there's,
what? Why don't we just end it with you having a brain fart? I mean, that seems like such a fitting way to end it.
yeah, that's been my life for the last 10 years. So anyway,
Oh man, that's great. Awesome, brother. Well, hey, man, I really appreciate you taking the time, and I'm really glad we crossed paths. And yeah, just really, really respect the work you're doing and the impact you're making in young people's lives, and the sense of purpose and meaning you're creating to honor Maddie's life and death. I mean, to me, that's one of the things I admire the most. So kudos to you,
well,
brother.
same to you, man. It's good to know you. I wish it was under different circumstances, but you know what? You're a good person to lean on, and you know what? I can always talk to you about the crazy shit no one else wants to talk about too.
Amen,
All
brother.
right.